Good morning and welcome to the Foster Swift Talk podcast. I'm your host, Dave Russell. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Charlie Sarche and Tony Delamonte. Gentlemen, it's been a while since we've been in the studio. It's good to be back.
Good to be back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're really excited today to be joined by Alan Trieu from 247Sports. Alan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
So, Alan at 247Sports covers Midwest football recruiting, and then as we were just talking about before we started recording here, yesterday was signing day, so been a busy time for you, I have to imagine.
Oh man, it doesn't. We were talking to some college coaches yesterday off the air at Big Ten Network. That's how I finish out my signing days doing BTN, and we all agreed that from August, when two-a-days start in high school, basically until now. There's no break in there. Maybe you celebrate the holidays a little bit in December, and other than that, it's from August until now is really when our first break starts is today. So I'm kicking it off with you guys.
Well, and you joined us on your first day of break, so we really do appreciate that. And I think, especially for what we talk about on here, you're so relevant and really can speak to a lot of questions I think people that listen to us have about recruiting and what that looks like and best practices. So thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, happy to.
So in terms of, you just wrapped up a really busy season, went for months. How are you feeling right now? First impressions after signing day, anything sort of big stick out in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think for signing day, yesterday's National Signing Day is putting a bow on it, but it's so much less important or newsworthy than it used to be. 10 years ago, National Signing Day, I probably write half of my monthly content requirement in one day. I'm on the air at BTN, but I'm writing articles. You can even see in some of those old shows, I'm typing and writing the entire time. Yesterday, I get to hang out and talk about everything that's happened already. The news isn't happening on that day. So National Signing Day has changed a lot. The early signing period and then the transfer portal window has really changed how much activity actually happens on National Signing Day. I think it's actually kind of nice for everybody. Everybody gets to just sign, or a lot of the kids now are enrolled in school. So they're already in a college class yesterday rather than signing their papers at their high school. So that's changed it. But I think, especially in the state of Michigan, probably the biggest news is you have the two new head coaches at the Big Ten schools. And so first classes for them, a lot of portal work, but also now trying to establish their identity with the Michigan high schools.
Sure. Alan, I mean, you've got over 100,000 followers on Twitter or X last I looked, and I mean, that's super valuable in this industry. It really makes you, a go-to source for recruiting. How did you get to that point? I mean, start from the beginning. Like, were you doing just blog posts? Just kind of tell us your story and how you got to this point.
Yeah, the very beginning was we had to do an 8th grade project, and we were learning HTML. That's how long ago this was. Whatever Netscape's HTML editor was. And, I was very into the NFL draft, and I made a draft website, which back then there weren't a lot of them. So I was able to get some traction, even though I was that young. I ended up covering the combine a couple of years later as basically a teenager, and then sort of worked my way up from there, got into recruiting through helping some of my friends try to get recruited. My staff account at 247, it was actually an account I created in my junior year of high school, messaging them to see if my friend could get on the website. So that later converted into a staff account. And then I've just tried to build my following from there. And it's always been, I think for me, it's always been about just putting out good information and doing honest work, not trying to build the follower count, and that, and that, so then it just kind of naturally became that way. But it's been over 20 years now of doing some sort of scouting work, and about 19 or not, been more than 20 now as well in actual space of recruiting.
And you noted earlier that there's been a change and a lot of change over the last 5 years. Wouldn't you agree in the whole recruiting process?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it seems like the early signing period is new, but I looked it up yesterday, and I think this was the 8th year. So it's been 8 years now that we've had an early signing period. And then I think the transfer portal changes that a lot. And then this year they moved the transfer portal window to a different part of the year, and it was just one window, where last year there were two windows. And so every year there seems to be a little bit of a new wrinkle, either to the calendar or to the way schools can recruit, that changes the feel of that recruiting class. Not too long ago you couldn't take official visits in the spring, and you couldn't take them as juniors. So there's always throwing new little things at us.
How's the transfer portal affected your day-to-day? I know 247 does a really good job of having the transfer rankings, but how are you tracking all of that, and how does that affect you?
That 2-week window, especially this year, because of just being one window, was the busiest that I can remember being in the last decade of covering this. I mean, it is you start day one, the portal window opens, we're on a dead sprint of trying to report which transfers are visiting where, who's signing where. I mean, when you have schools signing transfer classes that are anywhere between 20 and 40 members, that's a lot for a staff like us to keep track of. But there's so much interest in it too. People are constantly wanting to know who their schools are bringing in a weird way. It was like fun for me. It was like running a marathon, where halfway through you're going like, why did I sign up for this thing? But there's a real sense of accomplishment afterwards, right? Like you get to, and so that was fun. I would say for us also, I've always tried to go very deep in my high school coverage. Now I think the transfer portal changes the way everybody looks at high school recruiting, because nobody wants to miss Trinidad Chambliss. I want to know who that guy is long before he goes to a D2 or an FCS school and transfers up. Even Big Ten walk-ons, those guys have become, those guys sometimes establish themselves at their schools and are able to transfer out. And so with the portal, we know that no recruitment is ever really over. And so it forces us to go deeper in the amount of high school kids we have knowledge of.
Alan, would you agree, you talk about Trinidad, that's a great example, and, schools not wanting to miss on kids. But in the last, say, 10 years with Huddle and Twitter and, all the other things, now, I mean, it seems like kids get the exposure and there's not as many surprises. Would you agree with that?
I think it can go a little bit of two ways. I think generally speaking, you're correct. It's harder to get missed. I was giving some examples the other night of guys we missed who just back in the days where we had to track down somebody mailing us a DVD of their highlights. Sometimes you just wouldn't get them. Now with Huddle, we have no excuse to where you can pull, not just Huddle. We were talking about, you were talking about me getting tagged on Twitter, but we watch kids work out at their high schools. They're tagging us in their bench reps, in their box jumps at their gym. At the same time, I think we can miss kids now just because of the amount of volume that we're taking in every day. When you're getting that much information, I can't watch every rep. I can't watch every Huddle link I get sent. So even though there's more information available, there's also a lot more for us to filter through to get to the guys that we think are really the prospects.
Sure. Alan, how often are you going in person to meet these kids and to meet with coaches? Almost weekly, try to get out to somewhere, either a in-school workout or, like I said, even if they're just working out at a local gym, or working out with a track coach, or they play basketball. We go to a lot of those things, or it's a big national type camp. I'm trying to get out to as many different events as I can.
Alan, do college coaches reach out to you directly? What you do has always had a lot of value, but in my mind, in the last 5 years, with how things have changed, it's even more value that you provide. And your, especially in the Midwest, your knowledge, your expertise on these recruits, it seems like would be invaluable to college coaches.
Yeah, I have to be a little careful. I'm not sure what the rules are, but yes, they do is the answer. And it's for a variety of things. It's not always just, sometimes it's, hey, what, have you seen this kid? What do you think? Sometimes it's, have you seen this kid? Is he really 6'2"? And sometimes it's, do you know who we should contact? Is there a parent that's really, because sometimes there's always a secondary contact who has, influence in the recruitment. Is it the high school coach? Is it mom? Is it dad? Is there an uncle? Is there someone else involved? Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's simply just, hey, do you have a contact for this kid that we can get in touch with? And then other times it's, hey, we noticed you were just at this game, or we were at a workout, or you were at a workout. What did you think? Because they're so restricted by the calendar that there's only so much time for them to go see kids, where I'm not restricted at all. I can go see, like I said, I can go every day somewhere if I want to.
In terms of how you keep track of everyone, we've mentioned Twitter. I mean, is it at this point, is it truly just, you getting tagged in videos and, when people are going on official updates? Are you also like aggregating from other sources? Like, how does that actually work?
Yeah, we have a giant database which produces what you go, when you go on the recruiting websites, what you see on the front end, our back end houses even more information than that. And all of our notes that we write on what we think of a kid or when we went to see them that only we can see, that's all in there, as well as like contact information. And then there's other services that we use that help us organize that. And then we also have, the old school Excel sheet still. I keep one of those, and that helps me keep things organized. In terms of my tags, I mean, I go through, and if you're a kid who's listening, if I like it, that means I've marked that for me to go back and look at later. So that's how I do it, is the minute something pops up, I look at that notification. If I can't look at it in the moment, I give it a like, and then usually I spend a good portion of my day, usually right away in the morning after my kids get on the bus. I sit down and I go through my likes and I look at every offer or every video that I haven't gotten to yet, and I put those offers in our database, or I check that video off my boxes when I need to watch.
Yeah, when Alan and I were at lunch the other day, I told him I'm shocked that he doesn't have, an assistant that can be, back and put all that information into the database while he's out and about, visiting whoever, like, hey, put this kid in the database with this information. Like, I think you need somebody there to, give you another set of hands.
I have taken on interns before who did that.
There you go.
They quickly find out that just doing that is not a whole lot of fun. And
yeah, but that's probably a real valuable internship to work for you.
Yeah. For sure.
I'm looking, so if anybody wants to turn a resume in, I will gladly take the help.
I'm going to tell Bubba he needs to contact Alan.
There you go.
So, Alan, one of the things that you hear a lot about are, stars for kids, whether they're a 3-star, 4-star. Number one, are you the person at 247 or one of the people for the Midwest that makes a determination? Is Corey Mockery going to be a 4-star, or is that you?
So, yes and no. For a long time, it was directly me. I just did it for the whole Midwest. Recently, 247 decided it's a big job for us, especially as we talked about the portal responsibilities increasing, that we would split it up a little bit more, where there were parts of our team that were more focused on only scouting, and then there's those of us who are in the field reporting on the kids, because it's just too much to do both. And they felt like it kept some integrity in the system where, I'm out there getting to know all of these kids and families personally, and then we have a team who doesn't know Corey from the next running back I send them. They can give a little bit more of not that I was ever biased, but they give a very neutral perspective of not knowing the kid personally or the family personally. So at that point, it was determined that I was probably more valuable in terms of my reporting and being out in the field and figuring out who was going where. So I still have a hand in that process, but that's how we work, as the regional person who knows these guys, who keeps these databases of who the kids are. I send that off to a national team who then compiles all the kids from, all of the regional guys like me, and they sort of determine an order. And then we look at that order and I say, oh man, you're way off here. Or, I think you're right on here. And then we fight it out like any college staff probably does before they offer a kid.
Sure. Have you gotten any pushback on the stars? Because, I know people see those.
Never. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
People see those rankings, and I'm sure everyone has their opinions on well, I should be a 4-star, I should be a 5-star, and that's everything that gets put on the Twitter bio. So I have to imagine everyone's super happy with whatever is selected.
Far be it from me to ever complain about my job. That is the worst part of it, and it happens constantly. It is a daily, hey, why haven't you ranked me? Or why am I so low? Nobody's happy other than the guy who's number 1. Like the 5-star who's number 2 in the country, that kid files a complaint. I mean, and the fan bases too. There was, it's they're always complaining that we don't rank their players high enough. Gator fan for life thinks I'm biased against Florida. He has no stake in it. I'm the one that's biased, right? And it's always coming from the blue bloods too. Like I'm going like, if you root for Michigan and Ohio State and Oregon and USC and you think you're drawing the short straw, like I don't know what to tell you. But it's basically it's a daily frustration. And thank goodness we have a group chat of our national team where we can vent all of these things or screenshot. Like, can you believe what this Dad just sent me about his kids' ranking? Because it helps normalize us that we're all dealing with it.
What
the sharply worded email,
Yeah. Do you respond to those people, or do you just kind of leave them on red?
I used to respond. It's
always a mistake.
As I've gotten older and wiser, and my kids take up more of my time, I've responded to less. I've kept a few of them. The parents aren't always wrong. I have a couple emails from NFL Pro Bowlers, dads from back in the day, who are like, "Hey, you're missing the boat on my kid," and it turns out they were right. So I try to take as many of them as I can seriously, but there's times where you just can't.
Sure. Are there some kids you just go out there and you're like, wow, this kid's a 5-star? Like, I mean, do you have kids like that?
Yeah. So the first year that I covered nationally, they sent me to the Under Armour All-America game. That was the first time I had seen kids outside of Michigan or the state of Michigan or the Midwest, and it's the best of the best in the country. And I walk out on the field, and they assigned me quarterbacks and receivers. And the first two high school kids I see on that practice field, I still have the photo, Julio Jones and A.J. Green.
Oh, my God.
And I thought, I have not seen high school receivers that look like that in Grand Rapids, Michigan. No offense to the kids here.
You're like, oh, those are 5 stars.
I thought, so there are. I think when you have those guys, it's very, very obvious.
Sure.
In terms of recruits, do any stick out in your mind, in terms of just like their recruiting process, or your tracking of them, or how good they were as a recruiter? Is there anyone that's particularly memorable throughout your career?
Oh man, we can go through a lot of them, but I think it was around that same Julio AJ Green year that Kirk Cousins was right here in West Michigan, and I grew up in Holland. Holland Christian didn't have football when I was growing up. I think he was part of the first group of kids that even played football at that high school. And so I remember going to see him. I actually remember going way out to Penn State to a Nike camp, and he was there. And well, some kid from Holland's here, and met him a little bit. Another kid, Dad sent me his DVD. I still have Kirk's DVD in the basement. I keep the ones that end up making it. I keep a few of them. And still nobody, you wouldn't have thought this would happen. And his recruitment was interesting because he was looking at Western. I want to say like Colorado offered him at one point. He had a gray shirt, or a couple like preferred walk-on type schools talking to him. And Michigan State missed on Keith Nickel from Lowell, who ended up going to Oklahoma, and they offered Kirk right at the end of the process. And you know what? It was maybe that spring or the year after I think he redshirted, and I went up to Michigan State for a camp, and I saw Kirk throwing in their indoor, and he had filled in a lot, and I went, you know what? He maybe should have added a star there. but it wasn't, I mean, he was good in high school, but it wasn't like this guy's going to play in the NFL for over a decade.
Sure. Alan, I mean, you've been involved in doing this for a long time, and obviously, NIL is somewhat new. Rev share just got introduced. How has that, changed the landscape? What is your opinion on it? What have you seen? Have you been seeing it do more harm than good, or are you seeing, good things come out of it?
Yeah, I would say for one thing, when we talked earlier about parents messaging us or talking about ranking, I think certainly the increase in that is because the ranking is now, in their minds, tied to money. It's tied to NIL value. Before, it was just a nice something you put in your bio, almost like you made All-State. It's like I was a 3-star or I was a 4-star. Now there's some real stakes to it. So I understand that. We understand that. And that brings in some of the emotion and some of the passion behind it. So we never want that to color what we do either. We never want to like I said, we've tried to keep bias out of the process as much as possible. I do think, in general though, it is a good thing. I've watched the lives of families and of kids get changed forever. I mean, we can keep talking about Trinidad Chambliss, but without the transfer portal, much different life he's living right now than what's happened. Or we watched Liam Danitz this year go from Hope College to Wisconsin. That was a kid who was gonna go to grad school and just maybe be done with football. So, and now he's making real money playing his last year of college football, and who knows if he ever makes money playing football again. I would think that there's a shot, but it's great for these kids to be able to have that opportunity now. And so, and I think that there is still as somebody who's done this for a long time, there is still some purity to it. Kids still get on campus. They still meet coaches. They still choose the coach that they feel most connected with most of the time. There's still college coaches are trying to meet their families and their high school coaches and build relationships. So it's not necessarily, people think it's just kids going to the highest bidder. It's not the case. There's a lot of the same tenets that have led recruits to colleges for the entire time that college football has existed. Those are still there. NIL is just a piece of it now.
One of the things that we hear a lot from high school coaches is it's more difficult now, obviously, because of the transfer portal for high school kids. I mean, would you agree with that?
I think that got stated a lot towards the beginning of the transfer portal existing, and it became something that people believed, and I think it was true at the time. I think it becomes less true every year. I think another big piece of that was you had a lot of guys at that time were getting their COVID years back. So schools didn't have as much room in their high school classes. And so they were taking very small high school classes, like single digit high school kids. And people blame that both on the COVID year and on the transfer portal. And now that those numbers have been corrected, I think we're back to taking big high school classes. So I looked up and down the MAC classes yesterday, and those schools are still taking 20 plus high school kids. And so I don't think the portal is because now essentially what you're doing in the portal is your portal additions replace all your portal defections too. So if you lose 30 guys in the portal, you got to bring in 30 guys in the portal. So they replace each other. They're not replacing high school recruits. You still want those high school recruits. And so I actually think high school recruiting has taken on maybe even more importance. And then ultimately at the end of the day, now those high school kids, like the Liam Danitzes of the world, if you don't get recruited out of high school, before that was it. You're stuck where you are. You can't play yourself into a better situation. Not better situation, but you can't play your way out of your current school. Now, those kids, the journey never truly ends. So I think at the end of the day, it's way more positive for a recruit than it is negative.
In terms of the timeline, you mentioned, signing day happened, but it never really ends. So have you seen rev share and NIL sort of extend that process even more to where, kids are waiting until the last possible minute and, maybe that additional offer will come in and then they're committing?
Yeah, I think what happens a lot is like, the one real unsigned guy in the state yesterday was Samson Gash from Detroit Catholic Central, and he's been committed since June. But all of the things that you just talked about were still happening regardless of him being committed. So I think you see a lot more kids give the verbal now, and then it's that school sort of hanging on as other schools come in and try to offer them something. The average fan who looks at the signing class and reads what we write don't know sometimes how much those committed guys try to get pulled in other directions unless they decommit. So I know there were several kids who signed with schools who seemed like they never wavered, who almost did, and then their school has to come back and say, okay, no, we're going to match that or we're going to up that. So that's become more of it than I think waiting to the last second. Very few high school kids are good enough or have the profile enough to where schools will wait for the last second for them. So a lot of the time, the smart thing to do is give a school that you like the verbal and then see what happens. And then there's this mad dash of activity at the early signing period where schools go, oh no, guys transferring out, or we didn't expect this guy to leave the class, and all of a sudden they're offering a guy, and that creates a domino effect, and it gets it gets pretty interesting there during those couple of days.
Do you know when those conversations are happening? Like, a guy's committed, but like, are you hearing through the grapevine that, and I don't want you to disclose anything, but like, when you're hearing some of those conversations happening, do you post about that? I guess where do you draw that line?
Yeah, we hear about them all the time. I mean, the amount of things that if I could just say everything that I knew on a year-to-year basis, or I could write a book on my way out, it would probably do pretty well. It'd be interesting reading. But I keep a lot of things in the holster. That's built the trust over the years, from high school coaches to college coaches to now working with agencies and stuff. I think people know that I'd like to think that I'm never going to burn them on something. So I've lost plenty of stories, or I've been second or third on a lot of stories that I knew ahead of time because I'm waiting for someone to say, hey, can I do this? Can I put this out? Or how do you want me to say this? How do you want me to write this? And sometimes in that time, somebody else comes in who doesn't have maybe as much of a vested interest in that kid and posts it. But I'm okay with that. So, but yes, the amount of things on a yearly basis that I know, and that the staff at 247 knows, that we don't ever put out publicly. There's a lot of that.
Yeah, Alan, you mentioned it briefly there for a second, but also, with the introduction of NIL came the introduction of guys like us, right? Like attorneys, agents that are, looking to help student athletes and parents in this space. Well, at least some are, looking to help student athletes and maybe not get a giant cut, but what has your experience been working with agents? I mean, are you trying to work with them? Or, I mean, I know I've bugged you a couple times and have, tagged you, but, what has your experience been with new agents so far?
Yeah, you bought me lunch after, though, so it made it okay.
Exactly.
That's the bribe. I'll take bribes in the form of sushi. That's
love it.
You got Charlie to buy lunch. You're doing something right.
So it's something that I would say is fairly new for me. And it's funny because, this is now, it's been, it was 2003 probably, the last NFL Combine, or 2004 that I went to, and I would go to the Agent Symposium. I was actually kind of kicking around the idea of maybe going into that at that point as a line of work. And some of those agents who I met back then circled back in the last year, said, hey, it's been 20 years, but we're getting into the NIL space now, and we just noticed you're the same guy we met back then. And so it's funny how some of that's come back. And I'm learning the space from the standpoint of how do we want to work with agents. I think that's something for all of us who are reporting on this, is what are our best practices, and then trying to, there's a lot of agencies tagging us and reaching out too. So we have to sort of decide which boxes we're putting all of these contacts in, because like you mentioned, there's a variety from the absolute most reputable agencies in the country who are repping some of the top players in the NFL to, I'm this kid's neighbor, and he's decided to have me represent him. So, I think we've tried to, I've just tried to keep it to I want the information on what the kid's thinking and what he's looking at. If you can help me out with that, great. And then we try to figure it out from there. But yeah, it's something that I think is still in progress for us, of figuring out exactly how we want to do this. I had not talked to agencies. I had not been asked to put out even specifically like, we want you to put this out with this wording, or here's a press release that we want you to put out. I've always just written what the high school kid, like I've quoted the high school kid and this and that. So it's a real learning process here for us that's ongoing.
You talked about offers multiplying, and I think that we talk about that a lot. You see a recruit get a MAC offer, and all of a sudden they've got 15 offers, fairly soon after that. Why is that? Can you explain that? Do you know?
I think it's related to what we were talking before about the volume, because the college coaches also get tagged in a bunch of things. They can't look at all of it. So when they see that another school offered, a lot of the time it's a signal to them of like, oh man, that kid tagged me, or that kid reached out to me. I forgot to reach back out, though. Now I got to go back and watch that film. And a lot of the time that kid's probably a good player if the first school offered. And so it's just, it's visibility, I think, is what it is.
I've seen on 247, certain coaches will have, like top recruiter, or, you see when a new hire happens, they're like, they were the best recruiter in 2021 or something. And are you involved in that process at all? Like, how does that sort of ranking, and how does a coach become tagged, a top recruiter in the country?
Yeah, so that goes off of, which recruits they recruited that they signed and where those recruits are ranked. So it's not like we just come up with the list on the fly. There is a mathematical formula to it based on now where we have the power, or where I have influence in that process, is we put on the kid's profile which assistant coaches at that school recruited that player. And usually for us, it's we ask the kid who's recruiting you from school X. Or sometimes, maybe someone at the school will provide that. But a lot of the time it's through the kid or the high school coach of saying, hey, so-and-so is recruiting them. Where it becomes interesting is now schools are taking more of a gang tackling approach. So there may be the whole staff's recruiting a kid sometimes, or the whole defensive staff, and just kind of, funny inside. Sometimes we'll put a coach in there, and somebody on his own coaching staff will reach out.
Like, hey, that's my guy.
Yeah, he's not recruiting him. I'm recruiting him. And then I switch it, and then the other guy comes in. He goes, "Why did you switch it to so-and-so? I'm the one recruiting him. He's not recruiting him." Because actually, there's sometimes schools have bonuses tied in to where those coaches finish in the 24/7 rankings, or I know for that getting the next job. Those rankings are looked at, or it's a piece of it. So there's always this jockeying. So it's funny, even within the same, so there's guys sitting in the next office to you trying to say, hey, take his name off of there. It should be my name.
That's my guy. Is there any recruiter that sticks out in your mind where when they get involved, that kid might be going there, they're that good?
Well, I think as a head coach, Dan Lanning at Oregon, whenever even a kid way out here, when they say, I'm going to go out and visit Oregon, I go, oh boy, that dude may not be coming back out here, as a position recruiter. He just left, but Brian Hartline at Ohio State.
I'd heard that too, yeah.
Anytime, obviously, a wide receiver was looking at Ohio State, and they were already doing well at that position, but he jumped that up to another level.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was their receiver classes, and it's hard to get, especially wide receiver. Let's be honest, that's one of the prima donna type positions in football. To get four guys who all want to be the number one guy, a lot of those guys don't want that. They don't want to be in the class with Jeremiah Smith, right? For him to be able to get 2, 3, 4 of those guys to sign on to that, it's really incredible stuff.
For years on end, too.
Yeah. You can see it in, Carnell Tate's there, Jeremiah Smith's there. Jackson Smith and Jigba's on the same team as, Emeka Buka and those guys. Some of those guys don't get the ball as much as they want. Those guys want the ball all the time. So for Hartline to get those guys to buy into that, it's really incredible stuff.
Alan, what's the toughest position at the high school level for you to evaluate?
A lot of people want to say it's offensive line because they're so underdeveloped. I think the high school offensive lineman is increasingly getting bigger, stronger, better, closer to their ceiling than before when they were 240-pound high school tight ends. I actually think it might be running back.
Interesting.
Because a lot of the time they're just the best athlete on the field. So you don't get a sense of, at the college level, sometimes it's just about the guy who will hit the hole and take 4 or 5 yards. You don't always see that in high school because they're not forced to. So, you watch a bunch of, if you pull up the top even 30 high school running backs in the country and you watch their highlight tapes, it's 5 minutes of touchdowns.
Just touchdowns every
right.
play, yeah.
It's touchdown after touchdown. So then it's hard to tell at that point, does this kid have a feel for, finding the right places to go, feel for lanes? Will they run tough? Will they run through tackles? Sometimes you get some of that. But so I would say, yeah, and then if you look at even go back, have you guys watched the 30 for 30s of Marcus Dupree, for instance?
Yep.
Was the best that never was. It seems like people have been missing on running backs for years and years and years, and that's my assumption as to why that happens.
That makes sense.
You obviously look at a ton of recruits. What are the things that you see recruits do in the process that you're like, wow, that's a mistake, or things that you're like, yeah, this kid really has it together?
Yeah. So mistakes would be, I think, first of all, not taking every school seriously. I don't need to talk to Central Michigan because I'm better than a MAC recruit, or I don't need to talk to Grand Valley or Ferris. I'm way beyond that school. I think there's that. I think there's a lot of like focusing on the wrong things. So, focusing on offer count, for instance, or focusing too much on social. Obviously, I'm part of this, so I'm culpable, but focusing too much on your ranking and stars and chasing those things. And so it's a little bit cliche, but the kids who focus on football and improvement and life outside of football, so to where they don't burn themselves out. You get a lot of guys who get sick of the process of all of this. It's a lot to deal with. I just talked about trying to take a break here. It's the same thing for these high school kids, especially if they're multi-sport athletes. And then you're taking visits, you're flying all over the country all the time as a 16, 17-year-old. So I always talk to parents about like making sure that these kids don't burn themselves out and that they don't get tired of football and everything, not playing the game, but everything that comes along with being a top recruit. It's a lot to manage. So I see that. But the guys who have it together are the ones who I think can stay focused on the right. A lot of the guys who end up making us look silly, the guys like a Kirk Cousins or, more recently, like the Isaac Teslas and those guys of the world, those guys never complained. That is the common thread. Never got an email from Isaac or his dad or anybody there about why haven't you written about it. And sometimes I wish they would have said something, honestly, because maybe I wouldn't have missed them. But those guys tend to be the ones that make it. Is we rarely, all those our complaint department is very busy. We very rarely have to turn around and apologize. It's the ones who say nothing that usually end up coming back to bite us.
Are there any red flags that, families or recruits should look out for when talking to schools?
There's a lot of red flags when it comes to talking to agents. You guys,
fair. That too. Red flags in general.
There's a bunch of those. In college, with colleges, yeah. I mean, I think, has the college just shown any kind of like investment or taken the time to get to know you and make sure that their T's are crossed or their I's are dotted, or have they not? And I think that tells you something about that coaching staff. Have they just thrown out offers, or have they really evaluated you? I've noticed a lot of kids and parents saying that of like, well, this school offered us, and then we came on a junior day, and it seemed like when we shook their hand, they didn't even know who we were or our names, or we had to remind them. Whereas other times a kid will take a visit and they say, well, they had this whole presentation for me based on my high school film and how I fit their offense or their defense. And they even gave me negative feedback of, hey, we noticed you don't do these couple things very well. We would help fix that by doing this or that. And sometimes the kids don't want the constructive criticism, but I think a place who takes the time to do that, that's meaningful, and that place will probably develop you best. So I think sometimes kids can fall too much into looking at the bells and whistles. And so I think a red flag would be a place who kind of seems like they're maybe just surface recruiting you.
Alan, as we're getting kind of close to wrapping up here, I got a two-part question. So first part, what advice would you give to, a high school recruit who's looking to get on college radars? And then second part of the question is, what advice would you give to that same player to get on your radar, to get noticed by you?
Probably a little bit the same. It's funny because I just talked about how often we get tagged, but there is a little bit of persistence to this. So if you don't hear from us or the colleges right away, you do have to keep trying. And I know I'm shooting myself in the foot by saying that, but you have to stay diligent a little bit. It's like, I got that advice when it came to just like applying for jobs in colleges, of like just keep getting in front of them and keep making sure they know who you are. Don't give up with it. Getting out to events is important. It's maybe not as important as everybody thinks it is. I hear the word exposure all the time. It's probably one of the most overrated, overused words in recruiting. Exposure is, what does that really mean, and how do you get it? I think if you take care of what you take care of, if you're a good football player with good film and you're a good athlete who can back that up with either, hey, I run this, I run track, or I wrestle, or, those kinds of things, other sports, you're going to be okay without needing to travel all over the country and log a bunch of miles and going to camps and events for quote unquote exposure. So go to college camps, find out who you need to talk to from that school. And it's not just so we're talking about tagging. So yeah, in your post, make sure you tag the position coach at that school, but also get to know the off-field people. A lot of the time it's the DPP or the GM, or there's recruiting assistants. Now, they're a lot easier to get a hold of. So, Pat Fitzgerald's probably not going to respond to your tag, but if you find an assistant at MSU whose job it is to find recruits, he'll probably get that to Coach Fitz before you could. So do that. And with us, like I said, keep staying in front of us. I mean, I try to get to everybody. I have open DMs, which is maybe was a bad decision.
You're a brave man. Mm-hmm.
I go in there. I try to read them. I read them all, or as much as I can. And so just keep sending out your information, and don't put yourself out there until you're ready. I see a lot of that too. Kids are 8th graders or freshmen, and if you're 130 pounds, even if you're a good player on the freshman team or you're not playing varsity yet, just hold on for a second. I would say, like, when you put your first step out there, it's really hard to undo a first impression. So be as good as you think you can be. Like, really make sure that you are and you can look at the other kids who are getting recruited and see, like, am I there yet or not? Like, you have a sense. Don't get impatient and try to get out there too early. I think that's a fatal mistake a lot of the time, is trying to get out there and putting your name and your film and your things out there before you're ready, because both us and the college coaches will then formulate an opinion on you that you have to maybe undo over the course of the next couple of years.
Where do you see college football recruiting headed in the next 3 to 5 years?
But I hope that in 3 years, I'm not talking to you guys and the system's exactly the same as it is now. Something has to change. I don't know what it is. If I did, I would go work for the NCAA. But I think everybody who's involved in every level of the process, from the college coaches who are exhausted of this calendar, all the way down to high school. I visited some high schools in Chicago yesterday before going to BTN, and all the high school coaches are even saying, like, we're pulling these kids out of class all the time. My phone's constantly going off, and they have, a lot of them work as teachers or something in the school. There has to be something has to be done about the way things are currently done in college football. And I'm not, it's probably some little tweaks here and there, and adding some guidelines and things like that. So I don't think that it needs to be blown up, but I think some changes need to be put in place. I keep using this example of where Indiana signed a full transfer class in the same week that they were playing the semifinal game.
Right.
It makes no sense.
Which makes no sense. So if you apply that to the NFL, that would be like the Seahawks right now trying to sign their free agents for next season while preparing for the Super Bowl, which nobody would think that's a good. And there's only 32 teams, and there's less players and all this. So they asked colleges to do that. It seems like maybe we should rethink that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I had. And I mean, the college coaching lifestyle has always been long hours, recruiting's tough. It's things that the NFL doesn't deal with, and I feel like now more than ever with the uncertainty and everything. I mean, I don't know if it's a job that I would want.
No, they don't want it.
Yeah.
The amount of college coaches that I know that have gone to the pros and said, I'm never coming back. Chris Kleiman was very public this year in saying, I'm retiring because this is unmanageable and we're gonna lose good coaches. Some college coaches who I know now who've gotten completely out of the space and are in a completely different line of work. And when I see them or I talk to them, they tell me that their quality of life and their happiness is high. And so you don't want that to be the case. So, and on some level, people involved in football, college coaches are competitive. They're hard workers. They're maniacs. So you're never going to be able to fully save them from themselves. But you can. The rules don't help, and the calendar doesn't help that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Alan, I think you're a 5-star analyst for sure in our hearts, and hopefully you can start to relax here in the next few months.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us today. This has been great. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you guys, and I have a lot of free time now, so anytime you want to buy me sushi, Charlie, I'm open.
Love it.
I'm ready for it.
Cool.
Sounds good. Thanks, Alan.